Kara, aka Supergirl, is across the galaxy getting drunk, dealing with the trauma in her past. When Krypto is poisoned, she joins up with a young, revenge-seeking woman to retrieve the antidote and take down the person responsible. Supergirl is a disappointing follow-up to Superman, and a worrying one for the larger DCU. It loosely adapts the renowned comic book run Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, with a few tweaks and changes here and there, but it fails to reach the heights of the source material, primarily because this film lacks heart and soul. The film spends a lot of time depowering Supergirl, constantly putting her in situations that make her vulnerable, defenseless, and or challenging. It makes sense to do this as it adds tension and makes for some level of conflict. But it doesn't do Supergirl any favours on a representation level. Due to this, she spends a large sum of the time stumbling around and falling over. It's often played for laughs, despite not being all that funny, but the real result is that this iconic superhero rarely ever comes across as heroic or inspirational. It's great that she's flawed, it adds depth and makes for a compelling character. Milly Alcock imbues Kara with a lot of useful energy and personality. She's likeable, but I doubt many people will walk out of this film with a new idol to look up to. The supporting characters around Supergirl are not any better either. The cast of characters are made up of one-note stereotypes. The villains are growling, gravelly evildoers with little motivation. Supergirl's comrade, Rufy, is a revenge-seeking woman, and that's it. Lobo is a big, gruff, one-line spewing badass and little else. All of the characters in this film are given little to nothing to say or do. They're surface layer. Many of the issues come from the script and the pacing. The film spends little time dwelling on anything. It wants to put attention on trauma and loss, on how people deal with grief, but the film doesn't have the patience to truly explore these themes in any meaningful way. The film also wants to be a fun action flick with comedic beats and moments. Sadly, the action is generic and bland. Not bad, just not all that memorable or interesting. A lot of the action scenes come down to who can hit the other person harder. There's little in the way of brains or ingenuity here, and Supergirl herself is limited throughout the film too, not only in the prior mentioned depowered way, but also in terms of what this film allows her to do. Supergirl has multiple powers and abilities, but the film only ever shows her using laser eyes, flying around, and punching hard. The comedy is equally as bland and uninspired. The jokes are well-worn territory. There's a lack of finesse to them, and many of them don't incite anything close to a laugh. Lobo, for example, is given a large bulk of the one-liners of the film, but none of them land because Jason Momoa is caked in distracting but impressive looking makeup, and his voice is so gruff and gravelly to the point of being incomprehensive in moments. For example, one of his final lines in the movie is supposed to be a cool nod of approval moment, but due to Momoa's delivery, I and several others misheard the line and believe it to be a surprisingly awkward, misogynistic joke that doesn't belong in the film. Luckily, it turns out he did not say that line, but perhaps the editor and director could have adjusted the sounds and effects around him to make it more perceptible and clear, and also less problematic. The highlights of the film's storytelling come in the form of flashbacks. We get to see Supergirl on Krypton and her home after the planet's destruction. These scenes are brief but give Milly more emotional moments to deal with, something the rest of the film struggles with. Other flashbacks help establish a sort of origin story for this depiction of Supergirl, which could have made for a far more engaging and emotionally demanding movie than this. Considering much of this film concerns Supergirl dealing with grief and trauma and the potential loss of her dog, there's a strange lack of heart and emotion throughout its run. This is perhaps due to the cocky, confident persona Supergirl has throughout the film. If she's shown little to no concern, why should we be worried? The way in which Supergirl overcomes these mental challenges is also rushed and lacking. The brisk pace, short runtime and focus on action and comedy over character and story really does the film a disservice. The locations, the costumes, the effects, the sets and the lighting are all very well done, however. This is a good looking film. There's a level of creativity in the environments that's impressive and reminiscent of Guardians of the Galaxy and even Star Wars in places. It's just a shame that the film doesn't linger in locations long enough outside of certain action moments. Supergirl is a mediocre film. It has a decent lead performance limited by a script that doesn't give her much to say or do. It has poor side characters and a story that lacks heart and emotion, but it does look good, and some of the action scenes work well enough to pass the time. Ultimately though, this film is a bit forgettable and uninspired, and it makes me worry about the future films in the franchise, as well as the longevity of the franchise.